Federal law enforcement officials arrest two men connected with a secret overseas Chinese police station here in the United States. Yale University invites a virulent anti-Semite to speak on campus. And the Washington State House of Representatives votes to allow teenagers to hide their gender transitions from their parents. This is the noteworthy news that you need to know for today, Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. But first, you know the drill. Please hit the subscribe button below and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Julie R. Hartman. First, DOJ officials have arrested two men in New York City who are connected with running an overseas police station for the People's Republic of China here in the United States. Harry Liu Jinwang, who is 61 from the Bronx, and Chen Jinping, who is 59 from Manhattan, have been charged with, according to the DOJ, quote, conspiring to act as agents of the PRC government, as well as obstructing justice by destroying evidence of their communications with an MPS official. MPS is the Ministry of Public Security. And these two individuals have been running this overseas police station, which is its own sort of ministerial hub for the People's Republic of China. This apparently opened back in the spring of 2022, but these two individuals shut it down, at least temporarily, in the fall of last year when the United States government discovered that this has existed. Apparently, these two men have been fomenting anti-American pro-CCP activity in the United States outside of their running this overseas police department, including harassing and threatening with violence a Chinese national who they wanted to return to China. It appears that this Chinese national who is living in the United States was speaking out poorly against the CCP, the Chinese government, and these two individuals were trying to harass this guy to go back to China for his punishment. This is what an overseas police station does. Back when it was found out that China had these overseas police stations across the world, the CCP came out with a statement saying that they were necessary to help Chinese authorities combat fraud and to provide vital services, this is a quote, to their citizens living abroad. Well, we now see what those vital services are. They're not vital services, they're just harassment and bullying on behalf of the CCP. Now, I want to play a clip for you because when I read this news story, it rung a bell for me. And I remembered that I actually reported on this 5 months ago, actually during the second episode of my show, Timeless. Listen to what I say, and then we'll talk about why this is significant. Now on to international and kind of domestic news. China has announced over the past few weeks that they are opening several overseas police stations in various parts of the world. And one has actually opened in New York City. Now, the Chinese Communist Party says that these overseas police stations are necessary to combat telecommunications fraud that's supposedly practiced by Chinese nationals overseas. And also, the CCP says that these police stations are necessary to provide vital services to Chinese citizens living abroad. Now, my question is, and I'm sure many other people are wondering this, isn't this the job of an embassy? So again, that was at the end of November of 2022. Today, as I said, is April 18th, 2023. That was 5 months ago. So we knew about this overseas police station, but it has taken 5 months for the Department of Justice to arrest these two individuals who were running it and who were otherwise connected with fomenting anti-American activity. I simply want to ask the question, why has it taken so long? And I know that may seem like a sort of an implied criticism. Perhaps it really did take this long to find these two individuals and charge them, but we really need to be expediting these processes. It cannot take 5 months for these two individuals who are breaking U.S. law, who are fomenting anti-American activity, who are harassing Chinese nationals living in the United States, indeed who are operating a police station within the jurisdiction of the United States. We cannot let 5 months go by before we arrest and prosecute these individuals. And I go back to what I say on this show constantly. I reported on it as recently as yesterday. China is one of our biggest threats, and China is not going away anytime soon. I'm not going to regale you with the details. Those of you who listen to me are well aware of the fact that Xi Jinping is meeting with foreign leaders, the threat that fentanyl and TikTok and otherwise surveillance poses to us. But in 2024, we really need to vote on the China issue, because I am telling you, I am waving the red flag, signaling it now. Every American should be scared. We need to combat the threat that China is posing, not just to us, but to our world. Now, moving on to a piece of domestic news, another piece, I guess I should say, of domestic news. Yale University is hosting a horrible anti-Semite on their campus. In fact, they already hosted this individual on the second night of Seder during the Jewish holiday of Passover. This woman, Houria Bouteldja, is an anti-Semitic, anti-white speaker. And she happened to be hosted, as I said, on that date when many Jewish students were attending the Seder and could not protest her arrival. Now, it's unclear if Yale University happened to strategically schedule it for that day, but seems like it's not a coincidence. Let's just put it that way. So this individual has reportedly insisted that Jews, quote, cultivated Nazism, and has said other horrible, really just outlandish comments. And she was invited by, and indeed endorsed by, Yale's DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program called Belonging at Yale. Going to read to you a quote that is attributed to this woman. She said, Jews, quote, tolerated Nazism before it was inflicted on them. They absolved it, shut their eyes to it, and legitimized it, because until then it had been applied only to non-European peoples. They have cultivated that Nazism, and hence are responsible for it. This is a speaker at Yale University. In addition, she said, Zionists to the gulag. Killing an Israeli is killing two birds with one stone, eliminating the oppressor and the oppressed. And there was an individual named Mohammed Merah who shot up a Jewish school in France a couple of years ago. And this speaker at Yale is quoted as saying, Mohammed Merah is me and I am him. It's really difficult to know what to say to you, because it is just so heartbreakingly and disgustingly astounding. And that is the word, astounding, that we have gotten to this place where one of the most prominent universities in the United States is hosting such a despicable person. And especially amid, of course, all of this talk about how we have to combat racism and bigotry whenever we see it. What I want to highlight to you about this story is that certain individuals, not every individuals, but most of these individuals who work in these diversity, equity, and inclusion departments, who claim to care about, as I said, combating racism or bigotry, they don't have principle. What I try to do when I live my life and when I talk on this program is I try to think, what is the principle here that I am subscribing to? They think in the exact opposite terms. They don't think about the principle of combating bigotry or racism or hatred, because then they would apply that to an instance like this. They think about whatever is politically expedient for them. And they use these platitudes about combating bigotry as a vehicle, as a mechanism to get them their political favor. So when it's a group that is being supposedly persecuted, and it benefits them to talk about how that group is being politically persecuted, then they are the biggest proponents of combating bigotry. But when it pertains to Jews or to white people or to Christians or a group that isn't protected by the wokesters, the DEI people, then they don't care. A person can literally say that a terrorist who has killed Jews, this person can say, I am that terrorist is me, I am him. That person can literally get invited by a Belonging at Yale DEI group, because that class, the Jews, are not protected according to this woke policy. It is just really unbelievable. You know, Princeton University changed the name of its political graduate school. It was called the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Policy, because Woodrow Wilson screened a horribly racist documentary in 1915 in the White House called Birth of a Nation, which legitimized and sort of celebrated the Ku Klux Klan. So Princeton University, and by the way, I hate Woodrow Wilson. He was an awful president. He was a racist, and he was a very bad person. But Princeton University is going to take his name off of their government school, the President of the United States, because he showed a documentary But Yale University is not going to condemn or disinvite this person who is saying that Jews are in part responsible for the Holocaust. Do you see what an upside down world we live in? Also, Yale University, a few years ago, they had a residential college called Calhoun College, who is named after an individual with the last name Calhoun, who owned slaves. They got rid of that. Again, this is a person who's no longer alive, and they're focusing on that. But there's a person here who is alive, who is spreading such bigotry and hatred, and they are inviting and endorsing that person, allowing them to come to their campus. I'll give another example. Elon University banned the word freshman because it has the word man in it. They want to call freshmen first years. Google this, it's true. We live in a morally upside down world that is increasingly becoming anti-Semitic and anti-Christian. And this is an example. We can't say that we weren't warned or weren't aware of it. And finally, the Washington State House of Representatives this week has voted to pass a bill which would, in some cases, allow teenagers to not disclose their gender identity transitions, including surgeries, to their parents. This bill that was passed in the House of Representatives is called the Senate Bill 5599, and according to the Washington Free Beacon, it would eliminate a law, this is a quote, that requires youth shelters to alert parents when their child checks in unless there is evidence that the child is being abused. The Washington Free Beacon continues, the proposal would widen the scope of what constitutes a compelling reason to conceal a minor to include youth's sex change operations or reproductive health services like abortion. The bill, which the Senate passed in March, now goes to the governor's desk, he is a Democrat, for signature. And it is very likely that that governor of the state of Washington is going to pass this into law. So this means that Washington state would join Oregon, Minnesota, and Colorado as states that provide what those respective legislators call, quote, safe havens for transgender youths seeking sex changes or abortions. California Democrats, according to the Washington Free Beacon, recently advanced a bill that would allow children as young as 12 to check into a group home without parental consent. And as I reported on this show, our president, Joe Biden, said recently in an interview about when he was asked about certain Republicans opposing minors having sex changes, he said that that was, quote, close to sinful to deny a young person to be able to have a sex change surgery. And he even said in that interview that it should be codified into law, the same way that gay marriage was codified into law via Obergefell versus Hodges in 2015. It should be codified into law that young people, i.e. minors, can seek a surgical sex change. As I pointed out on the show recently, there's this idea that conservatives are fighting against transgenderism writ large. That actually isn't true. Conservatives are fighting for people to be able to make an informed decision about whether or not they want to be transgender. When you make that decision at 18 or 21 or the appropriate age at which you are an adult and can have that be, sort of developed enough to make that decision, few conservatives, believe it or not, would have an issue with it. The issue that we have is with forcing this upon young children. And this is another example of the way that the state is taking away the authority and the judgment of parents and handing it over to the government. It seems like a analogy that is a bit overdone or dramatic or that is exaggerating. But if you look at the Soviet Union, if you look at communist China, what they did was they took parental authority away and replaced it with the state, because that is a way to bring young people to your beliefs when you are the authority over them and not parents. This is one of the biggest signs of authoritarianism, impending authoritarianism, when you get rid of more localized, such as parental roles. And you know what? President Biden says it is close to sinful to deny minors to have surgical sex changes. Well, it is close to sinful, actually, indeed, it is sinful to allow them to do so. And so what this story shows is that this is not a fringe movement. This whole idea of proselytizing, of trying to make young people make these permanent decisions about their body, this is mainstream. It is now being adopted, codified into law throughout our states, and it is in the Department of Education codes of various states across the union to encourage this kind of behavior among kids and to deny parents the right to know about it. Well, with all of that good news, I hope that you have a great rest of the day. Again, I don't want to worry you or depress you, but part of telling the news is to inform you, and we all need to be aware of these things in order to combat them. Take care, everyone. Reminder to subscribe and follow me at Julie R. Hartman. I'll see you soon.